you that there's a giant smudge around the hatch. In fact, it's blood. Lots of blood. Your foot slips as you're running, and you look back to see that you stepped on something that looks like a slab of bacon. In fact, you have to slow down because your feet are sliding everywhere. The whole surface seems to be covered in some kind of grease and other stuff. Finally, you reach the stout hatch and your light is supposed to cut it open, but as you turn to the hatch, you see that it's stuck with this slightly open, maybe a 5-inch crack in the floor. And you glance inside the crack as you start to crack. And you lay eyes on one of the most horrific workplace accidents of all time. An event so disturbing, people will still be talking about it. That oil ring is about to die. The same when you go in the ocean, you re-enter the future. It's a foreign environment, one we're not adapted to or designed for, and that's more true the further down you go, the weight of the water puts crushing pressure on the body. Sometimes we gotta go down. Our modern world is a surprisingly extensive undersea infrastructure. From offshore gas drilling to windmills, to oil pipelines, undersea cables, there's a lot of stuff at the bottom of the sea that we all rely on. And all of that is in fact, it's especially vulnerable to the elements because it's in the ocean. But that maintenance has to be done by people. People who take on a special risk of going down there. Think about how hard this job is. You're doing construction work, like welding, bolting, cutting, the kind of stuff that would be a tough job on land, but you're doing it in the water. In basically a spacesuit. At depths too low for the sun to reach, so you're in total darkness. You're dragging massive cables. Imagine if instead of going down 20 or 30 feet, you're going down 600 feet, or even 6,000 feet. Like, how long would it take to decompress every time you came to the surface? Actually, no, you don't have to guess. I can tell you. It's a day for every 100 feet of depth. So, yeah, it's 600 feet. You need 6 days to compress and decompress, according to the energy. So you can think of it like a bottle of soda, right? So CO2 is added at high pressure, and it causes that to saturate into the water. Just like being in the water at high pressure causes gases to saturate in your blood. It's the same idea. But if you just release the pressure, then all those gases would come out of your blood. Bubbles would just form in your blood vessels. It would not be good. The trick is to turn the cap slowly, really slowly. Slow enough that bubbles just kind of don't form. The gas just sort of easily comes out of the solution. So if you're working down at the bottom of the ocean under those extreme pressures, and you've got to go through a long decompression process every single time you come to the surface, a long and dangerous decompression process for that matter, that's a lot of wasted time and a lot of extra risk transfer under pressure in the delivery. That's so we get it and be typed on your belt for certain.
Seven 870. No Niners. Welcome. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead, Mom.
You're good. I
Appreciate
Appreciate it.
Okay, so just to put this pressure in perspective, think about how your ears pop when you're ascending or descending on a plane. So they pressurize planes to be at about the same as 8,000 feet of elevation. That's about 0.74 atmospheres. So that difference that you're feeling is between 1 atmosphere and 0.74 atmosphere. It's literally a quarter of an atmosphere difference. Saturation divers go from 1 atmosphere up to 9, the deepest saturation dive of all time, and no human being has ever experienced. By the way, the air that they breathe in those tanks, so it doesn't react to anything, and it's also very low density, which makes it easier to breathe under pressure. But being that it's helium, it does have the expected side effects of breathing helium. That combined with the sounds that works differently under higher pressures means that these people, some of the most badass construction workers on the planet, people doing construction work on the bottom of the ocean, are talking back and forth to each other, sounding like this. Anyway, I hope I gave you a smile because the rest of the laugh.
Tell it. Excuse me.
Ferguson and Helvig had just come back up to the decompression chamber after finishing an 8-hour shift, which actually ran 3 hours over. Once at the surface, they docked the diving bell to the decompression chamber with the help of 2 dive tenders, weighing depressurized to non-atmospheres. Then the crew can go across the tunnel. This is the transferring pressure that I was talking about. They open the hatch, they get in the pressure chamber, climb in, reseal the hatch, and the dive tender depressurize the trunk, and depress the dive. And this is something that they do all the time, day after day. But on this particular day, something went wrong. What exactly happened has never been fully understood, though one of the crew did get the brunt of the blame, possibly unfairly. Some say it may have been a communication issue because of the stormy conditions that day, but basically what happened is this. Ferguson had entered the chamber first and stood on the opposite side of the chamber while Helldick was in the process of closing the hatch. But just before the hatch was fully closed, one of the dive tenders opened the clamp to free the tunnel from the diving bell. Again, we don't know if it was a communication issue or a mistake brought about by tiredness or fatigue, but when that clamp was loosened, the pressure went out of the chamber. Just in case you're wondering how powerful 9 atmospheres of pressure can be, the diving bell weighed 80,000 pounds. This sent it flying across the block. That diving bell smashed in the clamp.
Because remember they were upstairs?
Yeah. I guess I thought maybe more time had passed. I don't know.
Don't we? What do you for dinner?
Chipotle.
What?
Yeah, right. He was like, I'm not really in the mood for it. And I was like, well, that's okay. Where do you want to go? And he was like, I don't know. And I was thinking about what else was in that area. I was like, well, we can go to Hardee's because I'm not really in the mood for Chick-fil-A. Because I would want a wrap. And I'm not really in a wrap mood.
That's what it looked like from the outside. Anyway, they just stopped breathing.
Sorry, I need to go that
No, you're fine. I was gonna put my purse up, and then the Garfield was on the floor, and I know it had been on the floor, but
Well, Evie had been laying on it till you got home. I think she might have knocked it over.
oh well, no worries. I was just like I would hate for a certain somebody
Yeah.
to actually form a thought. Come on, Joey. Yeah. What a good Mexican doggy.
So how did the thing come off, Cass?
Let me rewind it. I'm not quite sure.
You clicked on this video. This is
Hey. It was good. How was your evening?
Howard, Lucas, and Ferguson just locked it.
There we go.
And Lloyd Lee, the 2 Norwegian divers, Norm Ferguson, and Schwartz Cunningham. The depth that they were diving required that they be pressurized at 9 atmospheres. They worked in shifts, with the British crew going down together while the Norwegian breaststroke and breaststroke. In the early morning hours of November 5th, Howard and Lucas were resting in their sleeping chamber, which in diagrams is chamber 2. Ferguson and Helvig had just come back up to the decompression chamber after finishing their 8-hour shift, which actually ran 2 hours over. Once at the surface, they docked the diving bell to the decompression chamber with the help of 2 dive tenders, William Crammond and Michael Saunders. The way it works is that they dock to a trunk that kind of sticks out from the pressure chamber. It's kind of like an airlock in space terms, but once that connection is sealed, the trunk is then pressurized to 9 atmospheres. Then the crew can crawl across the tunnel. This is the transfer pressure that I was talking about. They open the hatch, they get into the pressure chamber, climb in, reseal the hatch, and then the dive tenders depressurize the trunk and depress the dive bell. Now this was something that they did all the time, day after day, but on this particular day, something went wrong. What exactly happened has never been fully understood, though one of the crew did get the brunt of the blame, possibly unfairly. I'll give you that in a minute. Some say it may have been a communication issue because of the stormy conditions that day, but basically what happened is this. Ferguson had entered the chamber first and stood on the opposite side of the chamber while Helvig was in the process of closing the hatch. But just before the hatch was fully closed, one of the dive tenders opened the clamp to free the tunnel from the diving bell. Again, we don't know if it was a communication issue. It weighed 80,000 pounds. This sent it flying across the platform. That diving bell smashed into Crammond and Saunders with the force of a sandwich at full speed. Crammond held on long enough for the helicopter to rescue him and pick him up, but he died in the hospital. Saunders managed to survive but suffered multiple extensive injuries, including a broken back and a broken arm. He was actually the only survivor who had that. Because the 4 guys inside the chambers, well, this is where things get really grisly. I will give you a comment warning and ask you to skip ahead, but let's be honest, if you clicked on this video, this is the part that you came here for. Freaks. Howard, Lucas, and Bergerson just dropped dead. Actually, Bergerson dropped dead because he was standing when it happened. Howard and Lucas were actually in their beds, probably asleep, so they just died. That's what it looked like from the outside. And they just stopped breathing and maybe got a little puffy. Because instantaneously, nitrogen and other gases just surged out of their blood and tissues like Mentos and Diet Coke. Their blood literally boiled inside of them. In less than a second, there were bubbles filling every inch of their bodies. Blood circulation obviously was impossible, and their bodies just stopped functioning. Like, if you want to try to imagine what that would be like, you might think it would be like suffocating because no blood can get to your brain. Like you might have a brief moment of panic as you become conscious of what's happening. But here's the thing. Their brains were boiling too. So they weren't aware of anything. It was just over. The autopsy report talked about how this degassing of their blood also kind of solidified lipids and fats in their bodies. And they explain it like this. Quote, in the cardiac chambers and the great vessels around the heart, both arteries and veins, large amounts of free fats were found. This fat was mixed with gas bubbles and looked like sizzling butter in a frying pan. That's horrible. But as horrible as that sounds, it's what happened to the fourth diver that's made the Viper dolphin incident so memorable. Yeah, as I was saying before, he was in the process of closing the hatch when this decompression happened. The hatch itself is 60 centimeters or about 2 feet in diameter. But it was most of the way closed when it happened, leaving about a 5-inch gap. A 5-inch gap that television was standing over from it. So remember I was saying that the force was strong enough to throw an 80,000-pound steel diving bell like it's a rag doll? Well, there was that much force, then there was held it, then there was a 5-inch gap. It literally fired him out of the decompression chamber. And he didn't go through smoothly to get much emotional attached. His body basically was pushed up against that gap in the door, which was right in front of his abdomen. And the pressure then pushed through his body, sending his abdominal organs flying through the hole. And then the rest of his body folded in half backwards and just went through there. Only everything that I just said happened in a span of microseconds. From an outside perspective, there was just an explosion of body parts that covered the deck of the platform. One body part that they couldn't even figure out what it was found 10 feet above the decompression chamber. It took 4 body bags to collect all the remains, and investigators still didn't dig out all of it. Now, you might be noticing that I'm not using the actual pictures of the event in this video, and no, I'm not, for all the obvious reasons, but I did use the autopsy report as a source. It is linked below. It's just as brutal as you think, so it's not this one. No, it literally just like, it literally flayed him. And because of the way his body folded, it kind of defleshed him. So, yeah, there were like large chunks of skin laying around, including his face. It literally just ripped his face off. So, it's easy to see why this accident has sort of imprinted itself on our collective psyches. It's really, it's sensational. But for me, I don't know, man. It's just, it just hits that existential dread close for me, you know? Like the idea that 1 second you're there and then 1 second you're everywhere. Like, we don't think of our bodies as something that can just like instantly disintegrate like that. Like did he even have time to notice something had gone wrong?
I would hope not.
Was it just lights out? I don't know. Some people might say that's the best way to go, just immediate nothingness, but for me, I don't like thinking about this. Somebody paid for this, right? Well, I mentioned earlier that one of the divers took most of the blame for it. That diver was good. So yeah, Crane was one of the dive tenders that was helping to secure the diving bell to the chamber as the crew performed their TEP. And he was the one that pulled the clamp before the chamber hatch fully closed, which is a mistake he paid for himself. So when the families and the governments and the companies behind it were looking for answers for what happened, it was pretty easy for them to just point the finger at him. The company behind it, by the way, was Comex. They were the ones that were operating the Viper dolphin. It was in the jurisdiction of the Norwegian government as part of their sea area. Yeah, most of the blame landed on Cramen. And in fact, so much hate was directed at Cramen that his widow, Ruth Cramen, had to move away from her home in Edinburgh. And of course, it's not that kind of right. Obviously, the company wanted to wash their hands of the whole thing. The easiest way to do that was just to direct all the blame at Cramen because, you know, to take responsibility. eventually recover from this. But the reality is the company did make decisions that contributed to this accident. And those decisions were also wrong. Because it turns out that this kind of accident was 100% preventable by a simple locking mechanism that keeps the clamp from releasing into the pipe flows. And this wasn't some like fancy newfangled technology. In fact, regulations had been passed in 1982 that made these mandatory on saturation dive rigs. But it only applied to new construction projects. The Viper Dolphin was kind of grandfathered in. So they didn't have to install it, but they could have, and they chose not to. At the same time, they were pushing these divers on longer and longer shifts. Industry standard was about 8-hour shifts, but COMEX actually lobbied the Norwegian government to allow for longer shifts. This means the divers were working for as long as 14 to 18 hours at a time. So, I mean, of course they were exhausted, out of their minds at 4 a.m. in a roiling sea. Almost like working people who were thinking that safe is unsafe. But perhaps the real victims of all of this were the families of the sick and unwell. The Norwegian government denied compensation from the company and the Norwegian government until 2009, when North Sea Diving Alliance brought a lawsuit over the accident. That means their widows raised their children alone for 25 years on just a fraction of what they were expected to earn. They finally did settle the 2009 lawsuit. The money won't bring back what they lost, obviously, but at least the organization took some responsibility. And, yeah, Ruth Cranley was able to go back to Edinburgh with some measure of vindication. And thankfully, regulations are much tighter in the diving industry today, partly because of violent developments. I guess if there's an upside to horrifying accidents, is that they can actually lead to actual positive change because the world is so horrified by it. The North Sea is now considered one of the safest places for divers, but no place is completely safe. Even with modern technology, deaths of commercial deep-sea divers are still reported every year. One of the most horrifying recent events happened in 2022 when 5 underwater welders were sucked into an oil pipe off the coast of Trinidad. Yeah, the last man that got sucked into the pipe didn't manage to survive, but he was the only survivor. The deaths of the other men have been reported on criminal negligence by the fuel company. All of which might make you wonder why somebody would ever sign up to do a job so dangerous, but the answer is pretty simple. Saturation divers are some of the highest paid construction jobs in the world. And rightfully so. Yeah, the British divers who were on the Viper Dolphin were making 2,000 pounds per month. That's equivalent to 14,000 pounds per day, although they use euros now. But you want to know what's really crazy? The number of commercial diving deaths is nowhere near the number of deaths of recreational diving. So 2018 is the last year that I saw it. And most of them were in submerged caves. I will never understand why people do cave diving. Although, to be fair, there are a lot more recreational divers and commercial saturation divers. Even if it does pay a lot of money, it's still one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. According to the North Sea Divers Alliance, between 1965 and 1990, there were 350 to 400 working saturation divers in the entire world. Out of that count, 56 of them died. That's a 1 in 7 ratio. But that's a risk that saturation divers are willing to take. Because the pay is good, sure, yeah, of course. But it's also an important, challenging work, and some people love it. Isn't it? It takes a certain type of person to do this. I
wonder what their lifespan is if they don't
Yeah, Ruth Cranley said that she would
die like in that kind of thing. Like I wonder.
And you would just kind of shrug off and say that crossing the road is dangerous. For the record, he's not wrong. Looking at those 2018
Because of the different gases.
Yeah.
And 6,000 people who died from it. It'd be kind of ironic if one of those deaths was a saturation diver on his way out. I mean, they're not used to having traffic on the bottom of the ocean. And maybe some days we won't have to put people's lives on the line anymore. I did a video a while back about humanoid robots. Well, there's underwater robots as well. Like, we already have to tether people to the surface for air and communications. Robots can do the same thing and be down there for as long as they need to be. No decompression necessary. A couple of early steps in that direction include the U1 from New Air Robotics. It's designed to not just swim through the water, but to keep it in place, which is actually kind of difficult, and it's very necessary if they're going to do some work with it. Right now, it's mostly used for scanning
have to go
seafloor
potty.
and not so much for physical. But then you might want to look at the Aquanaut from Nautilus Robotics. It actually has articulating arms and robotic claws that can be controlled remotely or be pre-programmed.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was.
traditional search engines such as Google, Bing, and Yahoo. This means that the content within the surface web can be easily found and retrieved by using search engines, making it the most familiar and widely used portion of the internet by the general public. It includes everything from news websites, online stores, social media platforms, forums, educational resources, and more. At its core, the surface web operates through a system of servers and browsers communicating using protocols such as HTTP, meaning Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or its secure counterpart HTTPS. When a user types a URL into a web browser or submits a query to a search engine, the browser sends a request to the web server that hosts the corresponding content. If the content is indexed and publicly available, the server responds by sending the requested data back to the browser, which then displays it for the user. This simple interaction forms the basis of web browsing and defines much of the surface web experience. Search engines deploy automated programs known as web crawlers or spiders that systematically browse the internet index pages based on keywords, metadata, and other elements. These index pages are then ranked and presented to users through search results. The process is governed by algorithms that aim to provide the most relevant content based on a user's query. Web developers and content creators often utilize search engine optimization techniques to increase the visibility of their website within the surface web. Security and privacy are also important aspects of the surface web. Websites that use HTTPS encrypt data transferred between the user's browser and the server, providing a basic level of protection against eavesdropping and tampering. However, not all websites offer the same level of security, and users can be exposed to risks such as phishing, malware, and data tracking. Cookies and other tracking technologies are commonly used to collect user data for analytics and advertising purposes, raising concerns about online privacy. Web users are often encouraged to use browser extensions, VPNs, and private browsing modes to help safeguard their information while navigating the surface web. The surface web continues to evolve with advancements in technology, and the increasing use of certain content, interactive features, and AI-driven tools has transformed how users interact with websites. Although the surface web is vast, it actually represents only a small fraction of the total content available on the internet. Estimates suggest that it only comprises less than 10% of all online data. The remainder lies beyond the reach of standard search engines and is categorized as the deep web and, further down, the dark web. The deep web is the second layer of the internet, sitting just below the easily accessible surface web, and is often misunderstood due to its mysterious reputation. Unlike the surface web, the deep web consists of web content that is hidden from search engine results. However, contrary to popular belief, the deep web is not inherently secretive or illegal. It simply contains information that is behind logins, paywalls, or other access controls. The majority of content on the internet actually resides within the deep web. This includes anything stored in private databases, dynamic pages generated in response to specific queries, academic journals behind subscription walls, personal email accounts, online banking systems, medical records, and more. These systems often require authentication or specific URLs to access, making them invisible to standard search engines. For instance, when someone logs into their email or accesses their bank account online, they are navigating the deep web, not the surface web. Technically, the deep web operates in much the same way as the surface web. It uses the same internet protocols, such as HTTP or HTTPS, and is hosted on web servers. However, the main difference lies in how its content is protected or hidden. Many deep web pages are dynamically generated, meaning they are created on demand based on user input, such as a database query or a form submission. Because search engine bots are unable to interact with these input forms in meaningful ways, the content behind them is not indexed, and thus remains out of reach for the average search engine user. Accessing the deep web does not require any special tools or software beyond a regular web browser. What is required, however, is knowledge of where the content resides and the proper credentials or permissions to access it. In this way, the deep web is not so much hidden as it is private. Websites intentionally keep this content out of public view to protect user privacy, secure sensitive information, or restrict access to subscribers or authorized users. Importantly, the deep web is distinct from the dark web, although the two terms are sometimes mistakenly used interchangeably. In terms of its role in the internet ecosystem, the deep web is very important. It supports secure communication, enables e-commerce transactions, protects user identities, and hosts a vast amount of valuable information that is not meant for public consumption. Without the deep web, online activities that require privacy and personalization would not be possible. The dark web is the most concealed and least accessible layer of the internet. It is intentionally hidden and cannot be accessed through standard browsers or indexed by conventional search engines like Google or Bing. Instead, the dark web requires specialized software, most notably Tor, which is designed to anonymize both users and hosts.org. These sites are hosted on an overlay network that exists on top of the regular internet, but is only accessible via software that supports onion routing. Onion routing works by sending data through a series of volunteer-run servers, or nodes, each of which peels away a layer of encryption like the layers of an onion. This system makes it extremely difficult to trace the origin or destination of data, ensuring high levels of privacy for both site operators and users. The content found on the dark web is incredibly varied. On one hand, there are markets that trade in illegal goods and services, including drugs, firearms, counterfeit documents, and stolen data. These activities are part of what gives the dark web its notorious reputation. Additionally, forums and communities exist where individuals can engage in activities ranging from hacking and cybercrime to extremist discussions. Law enforcement agencies around the world actively monitor these spaces and have occasionally infiltrated and shut down high-profile marketplaces, but the decentralized and anonymous nature of the dark web makes complete regulation nearly impossible. The dark web also provides a refuge for individuals seeking to communicate or share information without surveillance or censorship. Journalists, political dissidents, whistleblowers, and activists in repressive regimes often use the dark web to bypass government monitoring and publish content anonymously. Secure whistleblowing platforms like SecureDrop operate on the dark web to protect the identities of sources. In these contexts, the dark web becomes an important tool for preserving free speech and protecting human rights. Accessing the dark web is relatively simple for those who understand the basics, but it carries significant risks. Users must download Tor or similar software and configure it properly to maintain privacy. Even then, careless browsing or interacting with malicious sites can expose users to surveillance, hacking, or malware. Many dark web sites are unregulated and may be full of scams, phishing attempts, or harmful software designated to steal personal data or compromise devices. As such, navigating the dark web requires caution, technical knowledge, and a clear understanding of the legal and ethical boundaries involved. From a cybersecurity perspective, the dark web is a double-edged sword. It is a common destination for stolen data, such as login credentials, credit card numbers, and personal information that has been leaked or sold following breaches. At the same time, cybersecurity professionals use the dark web to monitor threats, track stolen data, and understand the methods of cyber criminals in order to protect users and organizations. Because of this, described in online forums, conspiracy theories, and digital folklore as the deepest and most secretive layer of the internet, far beyond the surface web, deeper into the dark web. Named after the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the world's oceans, the Marianas Web is portrayed as a hidden digital realm where the most sensitive, powerful, or forbidden information resides. There is no confirmed evidence that the Marianas Web actually exists in any functional or technical form, and it is widely regarded as a fabricated idea or extreme exaggeration of the lesser-known corners of the web. According to the lore, the Marianas Web is inaccessible to any known software or browsing method used for the other internet layers. It is said to be encrypted with quantum-level computing and protected by protocols far beyond the capabilities of modern technology. Some theories claim it can only be accessed through advanced artificial intelligence, highly restricted government systems, or even biological computing interfaces. These ideas are based purely in speculation, as no practical example or verifiable technology currently exists that supports such a system. Stories about the Marianas Web often include content of immense secrecy and importance.
Coach presents The Feel of Fall. Shop water styles to love at Coach.com.
When your phone plan's as good as Visible, you've got to tell your people.
I just switched to Visible Unlimited Data.
A man who works hard, sweats hard.
Old Spice Slime fight sweat.
So
Some describe it as a digital archive of suppressed knowledge, such as classified government research, extraterrestrial communications, advanced artificial intelligence, or even ancient hidden knowledge. Others suggest it is where the true decision-making entities of the world reside, far removed from the public and even governmental scrutiny. These claims are typically unsupported, but nonetheless, The allure of the unknown has helped sustain the myth of the Mariana's Web. From a technical standpoint, no structure or protocol currently supports the kind of layered, secretive, and impenetrable internet environment that the Mariana's Web is alleged to be. The internet operates on a foundation of interconnected networks using established protocols.